Sorry, Krista, did you say?
I did not say anything.
Okay. Welcome to our George Harrison tribute. George Harrison's life was many-dimensional, as you may know if you're a George fan. And it's not possible to honor George and his life in, an hour and 15 minutes. So, as Krishna devotees, we'd like to present to you George as a Krishna devotee, his spiritual evolution to Krishna consciousness, his inner journey, if you will. And we're going to share a few of his songs, and may these songs inspire you to continue on your own inner journey. So,
well, we're going to contrast a little bit. Why don't you talk about your coming, the
oh yeah, I'm a specimen, an example of someone who came to Krishna consciousness through George's music, even though I didn't know it. Because as early as 1967, when Srila Prabhupada, our founder Acharya, he recorded a record in December '66 on the Happening label. It was like an avant-garde label in New York City. And Prabhupada recorded Hare Krishna and many of the songs we sing in Sanskrit in the morning. And somehow the Beatles got it. They heard about it. And they liked it so much, the album, they ordered 200 copies of it. And they became addicted, as it were, to the Hare Krishna mantra. We have a book, Chant and Be Happy, which documents this. And in one part of the book, is it John or George? They talk about sailing through the Aegean Islands, Aegean Sea, the island off Greece, and just singing Hare Krishna for 8 hours. And they just couldn't stop, because it was so intoxicating. They were getting high, chanting Hare Krishna. So gradually, as the 60s went on, George was working spiritual themes into his music, and it was so fascinating, even to his fellow mates in the Beatles, that they kind of followed him eastward. One reporter once asked John, who was, had the most volume, he's the most valuable of the Beatles, right? Ultimately got him in trouble. So they said, "Hey John, what's with George? He's so quiet." He became, they dubbed him the quiet Beatle. So John, George, yeah, he's a simple lad, He's a simple lad, but it's the mystery inside George that's fascinating to watch. So they were fascinated by George so much that they were willing, as you'll hear in the course of our presentation, to follow him eastward, which was a big counterculture theme. Many of us were reading these Eastern books. So Ganga Mantri has a different story. I came through George, and he stayed after George.
Well, what happened is, I was born in '59, so I was kind of a youngster when the Beatles were really in their prime. And actually, I didn't buy my first album till their last album release, Let It Be. That was my first album, but I had gotten the, some of the singles, remember the 45s, And so I was getting into the music, but I was really too young to ponder the lyrics, especially George's songs, So when I came to Krishna consciousness in 1980, there was about a 10-year period where I just kind of wasn't involved at all in modern music. And it wasn't until about 1990, and I sort of rebooted my guitar playing and performing, which I had stopped for about 10 years. So in 1990, when I started performing again, and I started looking at George's music, because it was natural. He was a devotee of Krishna, he was a musician, so he was an exemplar that and then when I started reading the lyrics, after I understood the philosophy of Krishna consciousness and the Bhagavad Gita, which we're going to discuss a little bit. Actually, this weekend happens to be, coincidentally, it's called Gita Jayanti, the appearance of the day that the Bhagavad Gita was spoken, which is the fundamental Sanskrit text that George got his inspiration from in his, or one of the most important ones. So, but listening to George's music, and what to speak of, then learning his music to perform, it was a real connection. I felt a real connection with him. And then many people came to be aware of the Hare Krishna mantra and get involved in Krishna consciousness through George's enthusiasm to share it. And although sometimes he was called like a closet Krishna because he had his fame and rock and roll friends and lifestyle, but there was an inner journey that we're focusing on. So we're going to start out with, you could say, his motto. This is from the title track from an album that was the first album released after George's first album released after the Beatles broke up. And George had a backlog of many songs because he was relegated to only 2 songs per album throughout the Beatles years. And he had a backlog of many songs that were passed by. And in 1970, he came out with this triple album called All Things Must Pass. And we're going to play some little interviews of George later on. But that was a theme that he always brought up in these interviews, that the transient nature of this world, relationships in this world are very body, jobs, whatever it is, it's very temporary. And there's an example in the Vedas of water in a stream or a river. Straws come together, grass comes together, and then it's split apart. So this is sort of the nature of the material world. So George was constantly, and you'll see and we want to encourage you to actually research on your own, just as we're kind of giving you an appetizer here to maybe pursue a little more. There's a lot of interviews with him on YouTube, and there's many books, but he oftentimes seemed very detached in the interviews, like he didn't see himself. The fame was actually distasteful in a sense that he grew very weary of the fame, and it wasn't just based on like cynicism. It was just that he had something better internally that was growing. So this first song is again the title track of the album, All Things Must Pass, and nice meditations. Sunrise to sunrise all morning, a cloud burst doesn't last all day. Seems my love is up and left you with the warning. It isn't always gonna be this great. All things must pass. All things must pass away. All things must pass. All things must pass away. Sunset doesn't last all the evening. Our mind can blow those clouds away. After all this, my love is up and must be leaving. It isn't always gonna be this great. All things must pass. All things must pass away. All It isn't always gonna be this great.